if I were to be talking like this, at the very beginning of me talking like this, it seems a little dramatic. But even right now in your brain, you're starting to realize I'm bored as fuck right now. But if I were to say, Sam, there's this amazing thing I have to tell you. I just brought my volume low at that one moment, which has dramatic effect. We've been pretty accustomed to thinking about image creation based on visuals, and we've talked about body language, and we've talked about presence and personality, but we haven't really talked about the other side of the coin, the vocal image. And in listening to a podcaster, an influencer that I follow, his name's Vin Zhang. He was recently on the Diary of the CEO. He's all about vocal image, and he's made a career out of coaching how to make your visual image more powerful and obvious and essentially represent the version of yourself that matches every other aspect that you're intentionally putting forth to everybody. And he relates the vocal aspect of things to an instrument like the piano. And when he made this metaphor of your voice being like a piano, at first I was like, what? But as he was starting to unravel his philosophy and the teachings that he shares, it made complete sense. So as he was going through, I thought of a story that I wanted to share. Have you ever heard somebody's voice or seen somebody's face without hearing their voice, and you build up an image of who that person is, and as soon as they start talking or as soon as they show their face, when you only had their voice to go off of, it's completely different than reality? Like,
Totally changes your
it changes
perception of them.
everything. Like, you're like almost like your whole reality just got flipped on its head.
Yeah, this podcast with myself.
Yeah, that's example numero
This guy
uno.
is an idiot, dude. No, yeah, that's well, it is kind of an example, right? I mean, uh, you go your whole life talking and communicating to people, and then you record yourself and you listen to yourself talk. You're like, oh, whoa, that's how I sound. Holy crap! I I produce a podcast for my wife, for Paige as well, and she can't listen to me edit it. She can't do
Mhm.
it. Like
Even
hearing her
still
own
to this
voice.
day, she's been doing it for a while, right?
She's 100 episodes in, man,
Wow.
and her own voice is still like nails on a chalkboard to her.
Hmm.
How funny is that?
Interesting.
Um, but yeah, the other example that I have that I think is a fun one is like, I mean, I love music, and I one of my favorite bands of all time is 21 Pilots. I think their music is incredible. It's this awesome blend of like alternative rock and hip hop and synth pop and all this stuff like mashed together. And I love when you experience an artist, you primarily experience them through like a recorded song, right? Where they're singing, you're hearing their voice, everything is perfectly edited and everything like that. And I was like, wow, I really like this music. And then they released an album, which was basically song commentary. You know how some artists do that? They'll go through each song in their album and the artist will just talk about it. Like, this is how we made it. This is what it means to me and everything.
That's interesting. I haven't witnessed that or experienced that, but
Go listen to the album Vessel by 21 Pilots and then listen to the song
vessel
commentary. And I guarantee you'll love the music
even
even
more.
if you didn't love the first cut of the record. Like, because it was this experience for me. It was like listening to Tyler talk about his music, and it was like it humanized everything so much more because everything just sounds perfect and edited and stuff. And then he talks, and it drew me in even more listening to him just authentically like speak about how he creates, and like, holy shit, there's a dude behind all of this with just some feelings and stuff. So that was that was a mind blowing one for me.
But did you have an image of him that changed, or like I guess when somebody sings versus when they talk, it's completely different. So it changed. That's the part that changed for you.
Well, yeah, because like an artist, they carry a mystique about them, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Okay.
so you just picture this person that's just kind of screaming behind a microphone and this like archetype of an artist,
Hmm.
and then you listen to them talk. I listened to Tyler talk, and I was like, I actually relate to this guy a lot more than I thought I did. You know,
Hmm. Interesting.
so
I grew up on video games. That was my thing since as long as I could remember. Um, Sports games and first person shooters were my jam. And once the multiplayer came out on online, Xbox Live and all that,
oh, like Halo.
Halo,
We used to crush Halo.
I would play online so much that when I played, not my normal friends weren't always there. So I ended up doing like single journeys, but then like a part of teams. So I would actually make friends on these games, and I would have communities, and to the point where at my peak nerd, I was leading a clan of people that would go in and like professionally like challenge other teams. And for the longest time, the only image I had of these people that I built up in my head was based on their voice in game. But as I met and got to know these people more and more, eventually like I've creeped them on social media. They connected with me or I connected with them. And I just remember this one guy that in every game he had this booming low voice that just made him sound so like bigger than life.
Yeah.
And then I go on his social media and he couldn't be taller than 5'9", 150 pounds soaking wet.
This is the Rick Astley
And
experience. Do you know who Rick Astley is?
Rick Astley, no.
You'll know the song. Never gonna give you up, never gonna
Oh yeah,
let you
yeah, yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah,
First line
yeah.
of that song: "We are no strangers to love." Like, he's same deal. He's got this booming voice. Go look at that music video, dude. It is the funniest thing. This guy is just like skinny little, like he's like swimming in these jeans from the 1980s. It's just the voice does not match at all. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that was my first experience, and then like another experience I have all the time is I will when I'm interviewing on the job, I will not only look at the resume, but I will greet people on LinkedIn. And typically they have their LinkedIn attached to their resume, so it's easy to find. So all you have there is the image of their headshot on their profile picture. So naturally, we create images in our head and stories without even knowing anything about them. All you see is their picture, their headshot, and the background that they're in. And then you meet them in person on the webcam or whatever that means, and then they open their mouth, and the image of whatever you created 95 to 98% of the time is wrong, right? So that's the whole premise behind what this Ving Jang guy taught me, and what I've really resonated with is our vocal presence and the way that we communicate. People create stories about you based on that, and it's usually different than just your looks alone. you know if they look at just your image, if they look at your vocal alone, it's completely different people. Together it makes you, right? So I wanted to unpack what those core components are of the visual of the vocal instrument that we have, and how we can, me and you and our listeners, go on a journey to put forth the story and the image that we want to represent, that matches, and not necessarily be stuck in this pattern of how we've been practicing speaking and communicating in everyday life and in work aspects.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. So the core components that Vinjang talks about is that there are five. The first one is rate of speech. So how fast you speak or how slow you speak. He says that an average person speaks at about 210 words per minute. You want to be between 150 and 180. So what he's saying is that on average, we actually speak way faster than we need to, and it impacts the message that we get across. And he says that with rate of speech, you can use that as a way of I'll get into that in a second, because all of these things kind of play together. So rate of speech is one, volume is the next. So how loud you are versus how quiet you are. Third one is melody and pitch. So essentially like a song, right? As we talk, our patterns and the way we speak have their own melody, their own way of singing and dancing with the message, and depending on how we vary our patterns, it changes the message that we bring across. The fourth is tonality, and then the fifth is, I think my favorite, is the use of pauses.
Hey there, real quick. Can you do us a quick favor and hit the subscribe button down there somewhere? As a new and growing pod, subscribes are really, really important for us, for people to find us. You know, we do this for free to provide you value in your work and in your life. And if you could just do this one thing for us, it would really help us to continue providing that value. So real quick subscribe, back to the video. Happy listening.
So pauses are a good thing. It's something that I think we've learned over the course of this podcast more and more, is we as humans naturally like to use filler words, like, right, okay, where a pause would do much more for us in getting our message across than those filler words that could take that place. So all of these things come together, right? So first, before I go into anything to add on that front, anything that particularly within those components that you gravitate towards?
All of them resonate deeply with me. I love this stuff, and I think it's very important. I think nobody does it well or perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's awesome. I also think that the art in all of this is being able to organically assess a situation and figure out which of these levers to pull to dial up or down. Because in some scenarios, you may want to go real fast with somebody, especially if they're going fast with you. But in other scenarios, you're going to want to slow way down. It's a very simple example, but really, almost in every conversation, you're kind of dialing these up and down. And that's an organic thing that we do every day. But it definitely feels like the trap that most people fall into, myself included, is you can kind of work to a consistent way of approaching these for everything. You know, the classic one in work is the monotone, which people call monotone, which really is actually a function of 3 and 4: pitch, melody, tonality. No pitch, or the same pitch, no melody, and a boring facial expression. The quarterly update today is that our revenue is down 500%. You know, like that kind of stuff. It's so boring to listen to. And that's probably the one that plagues the corporate world the most. So I think that art in a lot of this stuff is being able to just organically dial these up and down. And that's the mastery state.
That's
question
the mastery
then is
state.
how do you get there?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's like, for me, the melody is the piece that ties all of that together. You can use rate of speech varying, you can use volume going higher or lower, and use of pauses, but all of that has a flow to it, right? If I were to be talking like this at the very beginning of me talking like this, it seems a little dramatic, but even right now in your brain, you're starting to realize I'm bored as fuck right now. but if I were to say, Sam, there's this amazing thing, I have to tell you, I just brought my volume low at that one moment, which has dramatic effect. And I could even do that with rate of speech, where I could go really fast to show excitement, but then dial it back to show emphasis on the important part, right?
Hmm.
All of that kind of plays in. And I think it comes down to you talk about how we've talked about this tactic in the past, but I think the number one way is the most uncomfortable way. Record yourself and critique yourself. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I think that's the number one way, cuz for me when we started this podcast, I didn't really have a lot of filler words, but I realized that my variety in my rate of speech and my melody, I tended to stay on the same frequency, and I realized that that's can be it can come across a little bit monotonous sometimes. So that was one thing that I learned like really immediate when we started recording and listening back.
The one that I gravitate towards most in the too much category is speed. When I get excited about something, I go really fast. When I'm nervous, I talk really fast and think really fast. So that's been a big challenge for me. I've noticed that for a long time about myself, and I feel like just even over the last few years, I've started to get a handle on it. And podcasting has helped, obviously, but speed has always been the challenge for me. And when you're on the receiving end of speed, which every day people talk too fast at work and stuff, it sucks. It's almost boring too. It's boring to hear someone like rip through something because you're not catching everything. You're not internalizing everything that they're saying. You might be missing things that are important. So anyway, I love this shit. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so I think on the topic of nerves, I'm the same way. I've felt myself in presentations feeling my heartbeat go pitter patter pitter patter, and then next thing you know, I've just went through 5 slides in a minute and a half. And I'm like, dude, that was supposed to take me 5 minutes. So, like one tactic on getting over the nerves that I've found useful, and it's something that we pulled from in the past, but it works, is one, if you could focus on your breath as a way of preparing for that thing and slowing down your nerves. And two, if you shift your perspective, if what where do our nerves come from? Nerves come from internalizing the and magnifying the moment that is in front of us. If instead we focus on the audience and the perspective of the what the audience is going through right now, you're literally talking to your audience instead. So like was one thing talking about nerves. I've found that if I'm in the middle of a presentation and I'm really nervous and I tend to be talking really fast, I will try to catch myself, breathe, and then focus on getting the message across to the people instead of focusing on how I'm feeling, and that tends to help a little bit. So going back to the the 5 components, rate of speech. We just talked about it a little bit. What causes the rate of speech to go really fast? How can somebody slow it down? Do you have any tips that you use now, like knowing that you're aware that you tend to talk fast? Is there anything that you go through, any tactics that you use to intentionally slow yourself down?
1 and 5 are related to me. So rate of speech and pausing. Pausing has helped me slow down. Pausing helps me think. Pausing helps me formulate the idea in my head that I want to communicate and figure out quickly and on the fly how to communicate that in less words. So it also helps with being concise. Pausing has probably been the biggest unlock in a lot of this for me. I think the other ones kind of come a bit more naturally because I don't know, theatrical. uh, but but yeah, I would say pausing has been a huge one.
One of the biggest hangups I think that people have about pausing is they think the pause that you're implementing right now is it seems like an eternity to you in that moment. If you pause intentionally and then you listen back, you realize that was like not even a second. And it felt very natural when you when you actually listen back. But in the moment, oh my god, it feels like an eternity. Well, I can't talk. So that's why that's where the filler words come in. It's like I can't deal with the silence, so I have to put something in this little space. But if you think about music, you open up this conversation about the Vessel album and 21 Pilots. If a song was just the whole time, there's no rhythm to that. There's no melody. It's the art is created in the space that we give it. So whether or not the pause comes naturally because you just need to give yourself a second to regroup and think about what you're going to say next, or it's intentional because what I'm about to say is super important, you know? Like that was a pause that was intentional, but sometimes I just forget my train of thought, so I just stop for a second, breathe, and nobody even notices. I think that's if we get out of our own head sometimes that's a big unlock too. It's like pauses, but also people don't freaking see what you see in your head at the time that you're implementing that thing, you know?
Totally. I think pausing is really, really, really effective for presentations and the types of public speaking, different permutations of public speaking. I'm talking in a meeting with a lot of people. I'm presenting an idea. I think where it's a lot harder is in a group conversation where you're trying to go fast. I literally just came from one of these 2 meetings ago where we're talking about something complex and a few senior people in the room, and it's just like bop, 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 bop. The conversation is quick, and so naturally, like you rise to the tempo of the conversation, because it'd be weird if I was sharing an idea like this and then you popped in and you gave your thought like this, and then I came in and said, so I believe that we should evaluate this solution. Do you know what I'm saying? it,
Mm-hmm.
it would it would throw the energy of the conversation off. And that's where I've always struggled, because I still want to think, and like that's just the way that I operate. I like to be very measured, I think, with the way that I put ideas out there. So I actually don't do well in those conversations. That's
Mm.
always been a struggle
How do
for
you
me.
handle them today? Like in the meeting that you just came from, like what do you literally rise to that energy level still, or do you approach it differently?
You know what I do? I have my notepad open on my second monitor, and before I talk, I tap a couple of the key points or the words that I want to say. So the conversation is moving. I have something to say. Before I butt in, I'm just gonna like try to really quickly form that idea in my head, and then I'm gonna talk quickly over it. But at least I hit these 3 points. So let me give an example. We're trying to decide what country to launch in next, and someone's like, we should do Brazil. Like there's a really big business opportunity here. We have a few design partners. Oh, I think we should do Europe. Like we've already invested in Europe, and so we've got sunk cost fallacy that we need to deal with. And while that's all going back and forth, I believe that we should do Mexico.
Mm.
I think we should do Mexico because there's a major partner there that we've had some discussions with. I think it's a big TAM, a big business opportunity. Whatever the 3 points are, right?
And
I'm actually
tacos.
just going to I'm gonna tap out on my notepad. Big TAM, big design partner. Like we should prioritize this
Tacos.
market,
Yeah.
and then I'll butt in. I'll say the thing, and I feel like I can speed up because at least I've kind of loosely clarified the idea in my head. And then normally it goes just fine. There might throw in a few ums here and there, but fuck it. It's not a situation where an really matters that much.
Yeah, I'm really curious that in practice, if rising to the same level of speech and energy that everybody else is would have a greater effect or less effect than literally slowing it down when you give that idea. Like, if everybody's like, oh, Europe, oh, Brazil, and then you come in and you're like, for these reasons, I think that Mexico would be a good play here. Do you think that that would have you think that people would get annoyed that you're slowing the momentum, or do you think that that would have a greater impact?
It depends.
It's
This is a bland
contextual.
answer.
Yeah.
It's contextual, but I could tell you in the conversation I just came from, it probably wouldn't have been that probably wouldn't have been received well.
Hmm.
But because the conversation was humming along, like we were moving, we were
Hmm.
making progress.
Okay,
But I
I
think what
see.
you're saying is actually really just sparked another idea in my head and an example. What if it was an argument? What if there were four people in the room
That's
disagreeing and going really
hmm
fast?
yeah.
Because I've been there too. And I've seen executives literally stop arguments in their tracks just by using the rate of speech coming
Hmm.
in. So, bop, 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 people are going back and forth really quickly, arguing. And then an executive will come in and ask a question literally with that long of a pause. And they'll take their tone down and they'll just ask the question. And it completely takes the tension out of the room. So cool.
That's a really important tactic for conflict resolution right there. If you could use a combination of a lower volume, lower rate of speech, there's something about that where all of a sudden I don't feel as fiery as I did before Sam started talking. I've used that in the past too. And I've used it even in wrapping up conversations that were really intense and fast moving that seemed like progress, but like almost was like too many balls in the air to juggle. At the end towards the end, I will say, all right, so we just talked about a lot. But what I've heard and just summarizing where we are is bop, 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 bop. What that does is it brings us back to a baseline and to the same energy level so that we can like decompress and take what we just went through and move on it next. Two different scenarios, but similar outcomes where like we're just trying to like bring it back. One, we're trying to bring it back to a baseline in terms of like the progress, and the other one is baseline in terms of, all right, dude, we're not gonna fight. This is just business. Relax, you know.
Yeah, it's cool. I think what we're dancing around is most of the time people err on the side of speed. Speed kind of comes as a result of being nervous or being angry or trying to reason through a problem that's really complex and just talking and working it out in real time. Probably, I don't know, more than half the time, dialing the speed back is probably quite useful. And it's
Strategically,
it's it and it almost goes against, I agree, like rising to the tempo of like you naturally want to match everybody. You naturally want to match everybody's energy, be that like high energy, low energy, whatever. You just kind of naturally do that, I think, in the conversation. But yeah, slowing things down is often a really good place to start.
I have one example of somebody that I work pretty closely with where their natural, where I think most folks go on the side of too fast. This person tends to talk like this all the time. And holy cow, like that's tough. Like there are some people that are like that. I think that's more like the anomaly, but you gotta gotta find that balance. That's the hard part. That's the art, right? Yeah, you
I
don't
think a
want
lot
you
of
don't
this
want
is
to go
about
too
building
extreme.
that kind of awareness. And that's how you become a better artist. Is we're talking about rate of speech, we're talking about volume, pitch, etc. And then now you know what to pay attention to and what works in what scenario. Holy crap, that executive just like completely de-escalated that thing just by slowing down. Word, like I'm gonna try that next time. You know? Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think in terms of like the bringing to the volume? I think bringing it down sometimes has a place. We talked about conflict resolution. We talked about summarizing key points and adding some slower rate of speed. Do you think really high volume has a place in business? I can't find a scenario where it's like okay to
Well,
like really bring it
like
up.
to yell. Basically, is that what you're asking? Is
Well,
there a
so
place
like
to
there's
yell?
there's a there's a scale, right? There's a volume where you can bring it low, but like when do you want to bring it like super loud or like is there a moment for that?
When I'm nervous, I like to dial up my volume to kind of quell that. So during, I don't know, say I have like a board presentation or an executive presentation or something, that I've prepared for weeks for, and now is like the moment. So there's been a month of prep and stuff, and it's like you can't not have these thoughts in your head of don't fuck this up, Sam. Um, and so you're feeling nervous before it, and that's just normal and everything. But then you rip the cord and you finally start talking. I'm always going to like speak at a volume higher than my baseline, materially higher than my baseline, because that's just going to give me the little extra oomph in the first minutes of that presentation to feel like I'm rocking it. Like I'm going to puff my chest out, I'm going to talk loud, and I'm going to act like I know my shit because I do know my shit. And so I think the volume lever there has always been useful for me when I need to stand up and communicate an idea that I'm nervous about communicating.
Interesting. Super interesting.
You don't strike me as the type to do. I don't think like this is for everybody. You don't strike me as the type that would do something like that. You
To go
strike me
super
as
loud?
more the yeah. You strike me as the more calm, cool, collected, measured when you're dealing with a similar situation. Would you agree?
That's hard. That's a hard one to answer. I think so. I try to bring it down. I typically, if I'm in a room full of like super high energy, like everybody's going a million miles an hour, I'll typically default to, all right, can we all just get on the same page again for a second? And I'll bring it in and typically use that opportunity to synthesize what we just talked about and then like direct it with a question of where to go next. That's typically been my speed. But like you, in a presentation, nerves tend to drive outside of my default sometimes, whether it be typically rate of speech, and I don't know if volume is there, but more rate of speech will go faster than normal.
Yeah. But rate of
Yeah.
speech, that's something I don't want to happen. Volume
Mm-hmm.
is something I do consciously.
Mm.
Where I'm like, this is going to put me in the zone. Is if
Mm.
I know these slides or I know this idea and I'm gonna stand up straight and I'm gonna basically talk it to the room at a bigger voice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I will use that when I'm like really hot. I will use volume at key points, and typically after going slow, or like I'll use it strategically within the parts of my melody in which I'm talking about at the points where I'm really emphasizing or trying to like put some energy into it. I wish I had an example of something that I could say. Like it would be maybe we take a second. We could edit out anything like going into like too much experimentation. But I would love to play if there's something that we could write up real quick that's like we could say it on baseline normal and then like play around with it. So like today I want to talk to you about the quarterly business review for customer ABC. And what I found is that there's a huge market opportunity. So that's like kind of boring as fuck, right? If instead I came in and said, today we have a quarterly business review for customer ABC. And what we found is that there's a huge market opportunity in Mexico because of tacos. Like you notice how there's a difference there? And like one is like there's no melody, there's no rate of speech change, but then the second one there's some pauses in there, there's areas where I speed up and then slow down. Now I think what listeners would have to practice at and what we all have to be conscious about is it helps to know what you're going to say before you say it, because if you don't, if you're just kind of like coming up with words as you're talking, you're going to have a hard time knowing when that the beats are going to come in and out, right?
Mm-hmm. Your boy Vin also has a cool tactic on this stuff, which is like when you're engaging with somebody and you want to bring them up to your speed or your volume because theirs is too quiet or slow. And so, in order to do that, you don't just stay at your level and they stay at theirs. You come and meet them at theirs
Mm.
and you bring them up to yours. So, if you're talking really quietly like this, "Hi, Derek, I'm Sam. It's really nice to meet you. Really love the podcast." And then you come in and you're like, "Hey, thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Like, love it. Love you." That's
Yeah.
dude, I do that all the time because I'm like, I'm
Mm.
just gonna kill this person with kindness and excitement, and like it'll bring some energy into the conversation.
But the
Instead,
reality is like, whoa, dude.
whoa, bro,
Mm-hmm.
whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it's like, "Hey, Derek, really love the podcast. Love what you guys are doing. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it." So, like, what do you normally do for professional development? See, because I love, and then they answer, okay, because I love that podcast too, and like you just slowly can bring it up, and like we were talking about before, I think it's just like kind of an organic thing that humans do to kind of match. But when the delta is too big, it feels
Yeah, it's too
overwhelming.
novel. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. I love that
I've tried
tactic.
that with some people, especially when there's a big gap in seniority at work. So if I'm talking to somebody who just started at Circle and been around for 8 years, and so like, "Oh my god, he's been there for 8 years," which means absolutely freaking nothing, but like they think it does in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that like, "Hey, yeah, like, oh wow, you've been here for so long. Like, I want to like learn from you." And I'm like, "Thanks, man, I appreciate it." But anyway, like, what do you, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's definitely one I've experimented with, and it works. It's really cool.
It sounds like part of that too is curiosity about them beyond just the energy match, but it's like you. And is it always like the from the low energy to the high, or is it do you do the reverse where it's like somebody comes in like way too hot and you like kind
You
of
could
slow them
totally
down?
do it from the reverse. You could totally
Mm-hmm.
do it from the reverse. I've had plenty of people do it from the reverse for me.
Mm.
Where I'm coming in too hot or too fast, and they'll match me and slow down for sure.
So the other part of this is so pitch. So we've talked about this before, but like pitch being ending, talking super low or super high. When I was younger, I don't know if you had this experience as a childhood memory, but the baseball park was kind of like the hangout. Even when
The
you don't have a
vibe,
game, you would go there. You'd
little
maybe get a
league.
hot dog. You'd have all your little crew there. You maybe some girls that you're trying to holler at.
Yeah.
Well, there was one moment where I was like trying to like push my boundaries, and there was this cool group that was 2 years older, and I was like, my brother Kyle was always like the cool kid, so he naturally got a pass, an invitation because he's got a mustache at age 6, and I'm trying to like play it cool and but I was this baby face Bisson, and I hadn't gone through puberty yet, so I just remember
Good
this
puberty.
conversation was going, laughing, da da da, and then I was like, "Oh, this is my moment." And I don't remember what I said, but I said something to the effect of, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" But I said it like, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" And then one of the older kids said, "Wouldn't it be cool if you went through puberty?" And I was just,
Brutal. Kids are
oh.
brutal. Kids are so mean.
So our instrument, our vocal piano changes over time, right? But if I were to come in and every sentence that I said from here on out ended with a pitch like this versus ended like with a pitch a little bit lower, the way in the pitch that you use has a direct correlation to how your message is received. And we learned this from Vanessa Van Edwards as well, where she says if you end on a lower tone versus a higher tone, there's a something that happens when it's higher where people naturally question whether or not what you just said is truth or a lie, versus if you go on a lower pitch portrays confidence and a certainty about you. So pitch can be used like that too, where it can either be used to I don't know when high pitches are useful, but I know that low pitches tend to bring out a little bit more of a powerful sort of energy.
I could give you an example. I think, and it kind of relates to pitch and melody, right? Let's define melody for a second. So I don't know. I was just singing Rick Astley earlier. We are no strangers to love, right?
Beautiful.
La. So the melody there is la 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 la. Like it's not la 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 la. Right? That's a
Mhm,
flat melody. There's there.
mhm,
Melody is a change in pitch over time.
mhm,
So let me give you some feedback for a second.
mm.
Hey, Derek, at that meeting, you definitely came off a little harsh and you pissed a bunch of people off.
Mm.
Okay. Not very much melody going on there. And it would probably make you a bit defensive if you were on the receiving end of that.
Mhm.
Hey, Derek, at that last meeting, you were a little harsh. And I think it's going to piss a lot of people off. A little softer, right? Like, and
Softer, but
I
what
raised my
what what
pitch
did you
like
do there? Yeah,
I raised
with
my
the
pitch and
pitch.
like I think like because I'm not I'm not I'm not asserting that it was absolute fact. You know,
Mm.
I'm just saying I think that uh, this is kind of a soft point, but it was there. You know,
Mm.
and I bring my pitch up for that.
Instead of
And
I
so
think, that has a different, like, I think.
yeah, and maybe taking a step back, just delivering that message, delivering feedback on like with no melody is almost always going to feel more coarse
It
on
feels
the receiving
the
end.
second one. What I felt was it was more humanized. I felt like it was a human to a human instead of like a yeah, yeah. I
So
think
a
yeah,
boss to a subordinate or
yeah.
something, more corporate and stuff.
You know what image came to my head was, Office Space, the boss.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to come in on Saturday. He doesn't have any melody, no pitch differential. It's like always
exactly.
just like monotonous, delivering it with the same low energy. Yeah.
I think melody is a very good one and a very important one. And I think we could use a whole lot more melody in corporate speak.
Mm.
It honestly makes it more fun. Like that's
Hmm.
honestly is one of the biggest
That's what
things
it
to me.
comes down to.
Yeah, you listen, go to your next weekly status update and measure the pitch in that from okay, so next on the list of what we need to do is this deliverable. Are you done with it yet? Okay, next that that like or contrast that with like, hey, next is the deliverable here. Like, hey, are you done with that yet? Like, it just feels it's just a conversation that's more interesting to be in. It's
Mm-hmm.
just at the simplest level, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wish there was more melody in work.
And the beautiful thing about melody is that I don't think there's necessarily any perfect formula or right answer. It's very individualistic. Like the way that artists play guitar or play a piano or use their singing voice, you have your own footprint, your own signature, your own fingerprint. Your So use it. The only way that we're going to improve with melody and the way that we communicate and use these components effectively is by practicing, right? And the only reason why we are where we are today with the way we communicate is because we've been practicing that for years. This is the way that we communicate. And I think if you were to take steps on watching yourself and listening to yourself in a recording and trying to improve, taking one of these things every week, rate of speech is going to be my focus. You are literally ahead of 95% of people because nobody thinks about this stuff. Nobody thinks about it in their work like, I got to use rate of speech differently or change up my pitch or my melody. Nobody thinks about it. So nobody's improving, nobody's changing, you know. Give yourself some grace, give yourself some time to improve. Um because nobody else is. And that's what's going to set you apart. I think about this all the time because in a world where AI is getting more and more prevalent and things are changing so fast, what's the human advantage? What's the competitive advantage? It's communication. Has to be, right? So this stuff is there's a premium on communicating effectively. And one of the reasons why I care about it so much is because there's nothing that pisses me off more than looking out into the crowd of people on their webcam and seeing them scroll their email or type a mess. There's nothing I that irritates me more than talking into a void where nobody's listening to me. So like I make sure that if I look onto the presentation and I see people like I will change my course because that is what's the point of talking if nobody's listening, you know?
Amen, brother. I totally agree. I totally agree. And I also can't stress the point that you made enough that nobody practices this stuff. And then what you have is you have a bunch of very senior people who may be very smart. They are actually practicing pretty poor communication skills, but they're in a position of authority, so they can get away with it. And that's good for them. That's fantastic. Uh, but that's also a shame because it's a bad example. And what we talk about on this show all the time is that human skills are an accelerant to all of these things. Human skills are an accelerant to building relationships and to moving along more quickly in your career and in your job and making changes that you want to make. If you can captivate people with the way that you communicate, you are going to get more stuff done. You're going to get paid more. More people are going to be in your corner. Like all of that stuff is going to happen if you're a captivating speaker. And if you can master these like 5 elements, 100%, 100%. That's important. We didn't really touch on tonality much, on emotion. Do you want to get to that one?
Well, that one's important, but I typically find that we covered that mostly in the body language because it's a lot about emotion and subtle facial expressions that you use to emote to as a way of supporting the underlying message that you're bringing across. So that's why I didn't cover it too much. But if as a way of like giving an example, if I'm talking and I'm raising my eyebrows as I'm delivering a message like this, that indicates excitement. That indicates that I'm really passionate about this thing that I'm talking about right now. Whereas if I was kind of like hunched down a little bit and in conjunction with me bringing my rate of speech, my volume low, you might feel a little bit somber right now and a little bit like I'm delivering bad news.
Right.
So it's a way of saying like your facial expressions and your body language are another tool that you use within the other four components to get your message across. That's a good point. Like, why didn't we touch tonality? It's like there we have an episode last time that you could check out to get into some of that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think I mean tonality and pitch and melody are very inextricably linked to me as well.
Yeah.
It'd be really weird to have a lot of I can't even do it. I can't even have a lot
you
of
sound
melody
like
without yeah.
you sound
It'd be
like you're from
weird.
London.
I can't I can't insert melody without inserting like emotion in my face.
Yeah. Yeah.
um I have an example on this one though. Like I was just at a team offsite, right? So we had like 15 people, fly to a
Team
place.
offsite. That was probably not
Sports
the best
games
use
for
of
the
pitch.
monkeys. Yeah. And man, it's so annoying. It's a slight tangent, but like, let's do a team offsite. Let's do it in a cool place. Okay, let's go to Miami. Awesome, a lot of fun. We'd go to Miami and sit in a conference room for 2 days, and it's just still the most corporate, like boring setting in an office with no windows, like ever. Um, and so it was the first day chunk of the day was so boring because you're just sitting. There was a half or like a half square of desks basically, and everybody was sitting around desks, and then there was someone standing up and kind of leading a conversation. And It was just, actually, they weren't standing up. They were sitting and presenting from their chair. And it was very monotone, and it was very boring. And we were just kind of going through things. And then this is kind of like a toot your own horn thing, but fuck it. Then it was like my turn to present. And I did, like, one thing I did was I stood up. Like, everybody was sitting, I stood. And I literally would like point to the projector and like tap on the projector on specific things on my slide just to give some energy to the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I dialed up my emotion super intentionally because I was bored and I wanted it to be more fun. And so I was smiling a lot. I was raising my eyebrows a lot. I was raising my volume a lot. By the end of my session, which was a 2-hour session, 7 other people were standing.
Nice.
That was
That's
pretty
awesome.
fucking cool.
Yeah, pretty
Like
cool.
that doesn't happen that often. Again, it's almost this. It's another example of people rising to to match your energy in the room, especially if they're drawn to it. If you dial up your emotion, you're more drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, super effective for, like, again, just maybe making things more fun as well.
That's awesome. I have an opposite story where I had it was a long time between when I had given a presentation in person. It was always like online, and it was like relatively recent after I had been like in an elevated leadership position after Javi left, and we were doing an offsite. And I was leading the team activity where we were all like in a same division room, but then like there were these breakout sessions, and I was like, this is gonna be cool. It's my opportunity to like put myself in front of the team, but I was super nervous. So back like when you mentioned before about like how I handle nerves, in that scenario, instead of living up to it and going super fast and super high energy and over the top, I was a little bit low energy. I was too low energy. And I, in the middle of me talking and presenting, I was like, I'm fucking this up. I'm messing this up. I felt like so bad. And then it was my boss's turn to talk. And he like felt the energy not being right for the moment. So his approach was as a way of like starting his thing, he slapped the table and he's like, all right. And he stood up and he's like, da-da-da. I was like, kind of saved it. But like and then we talked about it after and we debriefed and we connected on that and he gave me feedback and I was like, that was a lost opportunity, you know? So like yours was going like super high because everything was low emotion. Mine was, I took the alternate. It was like a learning opportunity for me. And then somebody came in and did what you did, but like I was sitting in the other chair before. It was like low energy. So like,
yeah, I get that. And it must have not felt great. Also, you probably knew it right in the moment, especially when he slapped the table.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, you know, yeah. Probably just like, oh shit, he's now just trying to re-energize the room a little bit.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I love this stuff. I think it's so useful. So useful. Everybody should spend a lot more energy on it.
Is that the pod?
I think that is the pod. Zip it up, zip it out.
See you in a bit, or see you on another time.
Zippity-doo. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us at The Workflow. If you like what you just heard, could you take 1 second and give us a like, subscribe, follow, or leave a review on the platform you're listening to this podcast? It will really help us out as we're growing the pod. We'd also love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, folks you'd want us to chat with, or any feedback in general, just shoot us a note at workflowshow@gmail.com. Again, that's workflowshow@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.